From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode 184. Today's show is brought to you by Linode, Squarespace, and Pingdom. My name is Myke Hurley, and I am joined by Federico Vicici. Ciao, Federico.
Hi, Myke. I see you're going with the old school intro.
It's all I know, buddy. It's all I know. It's what I know. Stephen got really excited about WWDC being announced, so he's already in San Jose. That's where
he's already there. He's lining
there.
up.
He's setting
outside
up.
of the.
He's setting up. He's getting the tent ready. He's gonna, he figured he doesn't know if he's gonna be in the lottery yet, but just in case, he wants to be first in line, so he can wave at Tim Cook.
So he can see. So you can see all the new bits early.
All the bits. From next week, Stephen will be recording live from the keynote line, as he will be all the way up until the first week of June. But this week he didn't have all of his equipment ready in time, so maybe he'll call in by the end of the episode. Who knows? Probably not, because I'm editing this week, which means we won't have any disembodied Stephen heads popping in. So I just want to break that to you right now. I know how many people love that, but I won't be doing that because I'm not Stephen. And also, as I mentioned, he's busy getting set up outside of the McInerney Convention Center. Of course, we're going to talk about WWDC, including a really, really huge, amazing, massive, awesome announcement that we have to make a little bit later on in the show. But we do not issue traditions around here, so we must address some follow-up. Our follow-up is, thank you, our follow-up is slightly different this week, as it always is when Stephen's gone, in that one item is a brand new news story, one is about nothing we've ever actually spoken before, and then the other part of follow-up is just in follow-up, because part of the headline is called follow-up.
This is not follow-up.
So really, it's just because it says follow-up, so I figured it should go in the follow-up section. So follow-up item, which is not really follow-up number one, is that there has been another rumor about the potential of another cheap laptop in Apple's line. So if you remember last week when we were talking about what might come in an event, there was a rumor from KGI about being a cheaper MacBook Air this year. Well, now Digitimes is reporting a brand new entry-level 13-inch Retina MacBook, which will be unveiled in June with a lower cost than the current 12-inch MacBook. It's probably going to be $999 and reported to enter production in May. So what it looks like is they're going to take the current 12-inch, make it bigger, and make it cheaper, but it will have the same Retina display, a 2560 by 1600 panel. Now, all of this to me, Federico, says this is the replacement for the MacBook Air.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yes.
I feel like the KGI rumor and this rumor are the same rumor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that this cheaper MacBook Air is actually a cheaper Retina MacBook.
It seems to me like the details either about the name or the screen sizes are incorrect. And this is in fact the same computer. And the same strategy would be that it's the MacBook, but it's slightly bigger and it replaces the MacBook Air while also being, it gets a price cut. It doesn't, otherwise, to reconcile all of these different rumors, they don't just make any sense to me. This is much, much simpler. Take the MacBook, make it slightly bigger, like the 13-inch MacBook Air, but it's got a Retina display and it now costs $1,000. And it's the new Air, as it should be, because it's also thin and light.
If that happens, what happens to the current 12-inch MacBook?
It goes away?
You think so? So like they get rid of the 12-inch MacBook, they don't have a MacBook Air anymore, and they just have a MacBook line that starts at $999 with a 13-inch, and then that's that.
Well, I guess you could keep the old one around and also give it a price cut, but at the point you have a 12-inch computer and a 13-inch one, and also the old MacBook Air line, like some of these computers have to go eventually. So why not now? Otherwise, the solution of keeping them all around seems to just add confusion to the entire lineup. So I think either I would guess that the Air goes away and the MacBook is the replacement, even if it doesn't get a name change. Like, why does it need to be called MacBook Air? Because at that point, I think you made this, you argued about this on excellent discussion on upgrade. That the MacBook Air is largely there just to fit the price point, because many institutions, like schools, for example, they want that kind of computer with that kind of price. But it's also confusing if you keep everything around. So if you keep the cheaper MacBook Air and the cheaper 12-inch MacBook and the new but also cheap 13-inch MacBook, it adds the confusion to the consumer choice that I'm not sure Apple wants.
Yeah, I think that my ideal situation would be that all that remains is the MacBook line, and that maybe there's two configurations, maybe there's two different sizes. Like I could imagine them doing a 12-inch and a 13-inch, but just doing a 13-inch would be fine, and then that's it. It's just called the MacBook, that's it. And then they charge $999 as a starting price. It's got all of the current specs that the 12-inch has, and then you can get a more expensive one for $1,300 that has a better processor, more RAM, and more SSD in it. I think that this makes way more sense than last week's rumor of reducing the price on the current MacBook Air whilst also still selling a more expensive 12-inch MacBook, and also continuing to breathe life into a non-Retina Mac in 2018. That maybe makes a little bit more sense to me. And also, considering how little information actually came from KGI, that makes sense to me. The story got blown up because it was interesting, but all KGI said was cheaper MacBook Air. That was all they said. They said nothing else, right? So it could be that this is what it is, because $999 I think is cheaper than the current MacBook Air that you can buy. So that it would make sense to me that you could hear one thing and kind of get a little bit confused with something else, right? I can see how you would end up. Well, okay, so the MacBook Air right now starts at $999. So I mean, who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised if this is what we ended up being. Or if you think of it as I don't know, can you get is it 13 inches $999? Can you only buy that? What do you get now? Yeah, they only get the 13-inch. Okay, so I don't know, but it makes way more sense to me that the wires got crossed a little bit, depending on who the sources are. Or it could be that the Digitimes thing is wrong completely. We'll find out soon. I mean, I guess if I remember correctly, right, the KGI rumor suggested this might happen soon, and the Digitimes rumor is June, probably at WWDC. So who knows? We'll see. I'm intrigued to see how this one ends up shaking out, though. Reuters is reporting via a release from Apple that Apple Music has passed 38 million paid subscribers. This is up 2 million more since February. As a comparison, Spotify had 71 million premium subscribers at the end of 2017, so you'd kind of assume that they're around the similar level, if not increased. This does put Apple at number 2. Everybody else is so much smaller. All of the other players, kind of Google and Amazon, etc.
Yeah.
But obviously, Apple have a long way to go if they want to catch up with Spotify.
Yeah. They still have a long way to go. They're growing more quickly than Spotify. I think it's obvious. I saw a chart a couple of days ago showing the growth path of Spotify and Apple Music, and the Apple Music one is way it's a steep curve. So they're growing more quickly, but they're still behind. Spotify has nearly double the paying subscribers, and that's a big number.
And I think they have double that free subscribers as well.
Yeah. So that's a big advantage of Spotify, that you can try it for free, and that somehow, I guess, they make at least some money with the advertisements. I'm not sure if it's enough to keep them around, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, whereas Apple can just basically bankroll this entire service because they can. But I think it's important. I saw someone making this argument a few weeks ago. I think it's important to have a company like Spotify that's based outside of Silicon Valley, that comes from Europe, and that it's entirely about music. I think it's important to have this kind of player, and I'm sort of glad that Spotify is the leader because it keeps everybody else on their toes. And I think it's important, whereas all these other companies, Apple and Google, and to an extent Amazon, they just make the music streaming service because it's a feature, whereas Spotify, it is entirely what they make. It's the music service.
The only thing they do. That's their thing.
Yeah.
This is photo sharing all over again. We've mentioned that before on the show, right? Companies that were just doing photo sharing couldn't exist in the long term. And if anything, storage was their problem. The music streaming services, they have the whims of the record labels, which I think are even more volatile, which is a whole different thing in those contracts. I'm keen to see how Spotify continue into the future. The numbers that they're at right now are impressive, but I don't know if that is a money-making endeavor going long into the future. As you say, especially when companies like Apple and Google and Amazon, they offer this as part of their overall business, and they can use other parts of their business to undercut and to subsidize the cost of doing a service like this and paying for deals. I do have a question for you, though. Where is this growth coming from for Apple? Like, that's what I'm really trying to wrap my head around. Why is it growing at such a fast rate?
Well, I think based on conversations I had with my friends, which are always fascinating because they allow me to sort of get a different point of view. Mm-hmm. The strength of the built-in advertisement, essentially, in the music app on iOS, and the fact that the credit card is already on file is a big incentive, I think, to push these people to all these new users to subscribe, because it's so easy and it's built in, and it's. I think there's also an association that people make between Beats and Apple Music with the headphones and the music service that I think it's helping. But I'm surprised by the fact that a lot of my friends, they keep mentioning Siri as a feature that when they're driving, they can ask Siri to play music, which I was not expecting. But I think mostly it's about the fact that it's the music app, it's in the system, and it works with iTunes, which a lot of my friends still use to upload their own, albums and songs. And the fact that the credit card is the same as the iCloud account, basically as the iTunes Store account, and so everything is built in and is easy enough to sign up for and forget about it essentially.
That makes sense. And our last piece of follow-up, this is the piece that has no bearing on anything previously discussed, is the Amazon Echo follow-up mode. This is a new feature that the Amazon Echo has got in the past week or so. For some reason, I'll never understand. This is a US-only feature right now. This has happened with basically every feature that Amazon have added to the Echo. It goes to the US and then rolls out to other territories later on. It doesn't make any sense to me why this is the case, considering it's the same company that makes all this stuff. But hey-ho, I had to wait for months for name timers.
Well, I think obviously it's a John Siracusa copyright problem.
That is true. They only got the licensing deal in the US for the follow-up term. That makes a lot of sense. But the feature is really cool, so I'm looking forward to getting it. What it will do is you can now enable this option. You turn it on in the settings for your Echo devices to continue listening for 5 seconds after a command has been executed. So if you say, hey, turn on the lights, it turns on the lights. It will listen for another 5 seconds. So you could then, for example, say, and set a timer for 10 minutes. So this will allow you to chain commands together. So I think this is really cool because this is a nice little addition. There are times when I would want to do this, especially, cooking is the often used one, right? But like sometimes if I'm setting multiple timers, I'm setting them at the same time. And being able to do 2 different things at once is a great little workaround. I mean, it would be nicer if I could ask for both of these things at the same time. But until they gain the feature possibility to do that, I'm cool with executing one command after another in a chain.
Yeah, I think it's a good workaround. I think it makes sense. It's obviously not what the future of these things will look like. No. I think eventually we'll have assistants with the ability to discern different sentences within the same activation command. That's obviously the way it's going to go. That if I ask you to turn on the lights and then I ask you to also set a timer, I don't mean to turn on a light named pasta timer because that's what happens right now. All the names and all the terms get mixed up in a single command. So eventually, an assistant should be smart enough to interpret these 2 commands as 2 sentences and therefore 2 actions. But right now, I think it's a very clever workaround, and I wouldn't mind to see this kind of option in Siri going forward, unless Apple is working on real multi-command support. But I would be surprised considering all the other things they need to fix first. But right now, this is should get the job done, I suppose.
All right, today's show is brought to you in part by our friends at Linode. Linode offer industry-leading performance with native SSD storage, a 40 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors to power their amazing hosting options. They have prices starting at just $5 a month, and you'll be able to get your own virtual server up and running in the Linode cloud in under a minute. They have 10 data centers spread across the world, meaning you can serve your customers even quicker than ever before. They have an API to allow you to easily automate tasks or develop custom applications in the cloud. Everything is manageable via the command line, and all of their pricing tiers feature hourly billing with a monthly cap on all plans and add-on services like backups and no balancers. Linode has wonderful pricing options available. You can start at a gigabyte of RAM for just $5 a month, and they can even go all the way up to huge memory plans, like 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's where their high memory plans start. You can go beyond that even. As a listener of this show, if you sign up at linode.com/connected, that's linode.com/connected, you'll be supporting this show and also getting yourself $20 towards any Linode plan. On the 1 gigabyte of RAM plan, that is 4 free months for you to go and try out. We have a 7-day money-back guarantee. There's nothing to lose. So head on over to linode.com/connected right now to learn more, sign up, and take advantage of that $20 credit, or you can just use the promo code CONNECTED2018 at checkout. Our thanks to Linode for their support of this show and Relay FM. So yesterday, March 13th, out of nowhere, WWDC was announced. WWDC 2018 will be back in San Jose from June 4th to June 8th. As we expected last year, this is a permanent move, or at least a permanent move for the time being. But this is where we are, June 4th to 8th, 2018. We're both going to be there, of course. But more importantly than that, we have a pretty awesome announcement. We're going to be doing a live show at WWDC in conjunction with AuntConf and the folk at the Accidental Tech Podcast. We are putting on the first ever WWDC Podcast Festival. There's going to be 2 days of podcasts in the evenings. ATP is going to be on Monday, June 4th, and we are going to be doing a Relay FM live show on June 6th. In conjunction with AuntConf. There are tickets available now. I'll put a bunch of links in the show notes so you'll be able to go and get your tickets. We got tickets on sale right now. They are $5, and all of the money for the tickets is going to be going towards helping AuntConf. So all the money is going to AuntConf to help support what they're doing. They do a great service for people attending WWDC. They're a great option to go to even if you don't get yourself a pass. They've got loads of really, really awesome and amazing stuff, and you can even attend for free. There are options to pay, but you can attend AuntConf for free, which is just kind of awesome. They're really great with that sort of stuff. So we're going to be doing a live show. It's going to be broken up into some fun segments like what we did in 2016 when we did a RelayCon San Francisco. So the show will feature the three of us, so me, Steven, and Federico in the first section. And then Steven is working on some programming for the other sections. So he's working on that. I'm very excited. There's going to be some mashups and some crossovers with other Relay FM shows. We're really excited about it. I have no idea how long the tickets are going to be on sale for. I would just say this is a significantly larger show than we've ever done before. There are 900 tickets available, which is bonkers. It's like 3 to 4 times larger than any live show we've ever done. But I will say, if our waiting lists every other year have proven anything, is that there would be that amount of people that would want to get a ticket. So if you are interested, there'll be links in the show notes for you to go and pick up tickets of your own. But of course, you can just go to auntconf.com and you can get a ticket to our live show. So if you're going to be in town, please grab a ticket. If you've got any questions, you can reach out to us on Twitter, but all of the information should be available in our show notes. So we're really excited. Anyway, let's talk about WWDC, shall we? Okay. So San Jose, we're very happy about that, right? I mean, last year felt fantastic.
Yes.
It was a great environment. It was way nicer than any other year that I've been to. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. So I'm expecting that it will continue to be that, and may even be even better than last year, would be my hope.
Yeah, I think so, especially because Apple had the time to work out all the issues with the new location last year. I mean, the entire organization was already quite smooth, and they partnered with other events throughout town during the week. I think it was really great. I had a great time, and the city was lovely, and the weather was fantastic, of course, because it's California. And I think it will be even better this time because now we know what we are doing. We are more used to the place. We know where we're going, and we know where to get good coffee. So I think that's really important. And I think the inside of the convention center, I think it was probably nicer than Moscone. From my personal experience, I think it was just nicer. Even the outside, being able to be outside, there was like you could sit at a table or just, on the ground. There were like an entire garden type situation. I think it was really, really lovely. So I'm happy that it's again in San Jose because I had a great time and great decision to not be in San Francisco.
Yeah, I hope that the vibe continues of like feeling like the town gets taken over. I'll note that like hotels and stuff seem to have been booked up way quicker. Like the hotel that we stayed at last year, same hotel we're staying at this year, there are no rooms available. We actually booked rooms on a whim like 3 months ago. Just kind of guessed some dates and started putting some deposits down on rooms, and we were okay, which is great. I'm very pleased about that. But all about the branding for WWDC this year, I love that they've got dot grid paper. Dot grid is my favorite type of paper.
Okay, so it's entirely about paper because I've seen all these tweets that like dot grid is the best. Dot grid is all that. Like, okay, it's paper. Okay.
Yeah, right. Like a dot grid is great because it doesn't like box you in as much as a regular grid would,
Right.
So yeah, this is a dot grid. I mean, what they're showing here is building blocks. I'm not really looking into it very much. I see people, I don't know if they're joking or not, saying like, oh, they're bringing depth back to the design. I don't know if it means anything other than just like this is just building blocks of design, right? Like this is kind of, you would sketch out your app on paper, that kind of thing. And I think it looks really nice. I like the aesthetic that they're going for. It's kind of cool.
Some people on Twitter would have you believe that you have no right to like this type of 3D style because Apple has no right to go back to depth and shadows because of the crimes they committed with iOS 7. It's a nice graphic. It's a nice webpage. I think it's a lovely look. This 3D combination of various interface elements and programming signs. I think it looks fantastic. I wouldn't read too much into, Apple is bringing back 3D and shadows and perspective. I don't think it's that. I think it's just, a graphic designer needed to put up a visual identity for WWDC, and this is what they were going for. There's no, some folks like to see the conspiracy everywhere. Sometimes it's just, a couple of designers making cool graphics.
Just from a visual design perspective, I'm interested to see how this translates. Because the what you get here, the branding of the website is the branding of the conference, and that branding is carried through to banners and posters and little elements that go throughout the conference. And all white, everything in white. I'm interested to see how that translates to other materials.
It's because we the people bring the color. It's what we do.
Or Johnny got his hands all over it and just like all white, white only,
or that. But my message is more inspiring and positive.
Yes,
I like to go with that. Mm-hmm.
It is. But I'm interested to see how it will translate because I love all that. I like the visual design aspect, right? Like I think that's fun. I always love walking around the town and seeing the banners up and stuff like that. So I'm keen to see how that translates. Maybe you're all going to get some nice dot grid notebooks when you're standing in line, so you can take all your important notes for the conference.
Or maybe they give you little objects shaped like these interface elements, and somehow they are AR toys that you point your iPhone camera at, and they transform into little figurines and characters. Sort of like Nintendo bundled like those AR cards with the Nintendo DS. You remember those?
3DS.
Like,
yeah.
And the 3DS,
you could like look at the card and fall into the table.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's something like that.
So I felt like this announcement came out of the blue a little bit. Obviously, I was starting to believe we're getting closer, right? Because I don't think I expected we would find out as early as we did, because it was a couple of weeks prior to this, a year ago. It was early March that we found out, and that was because they up and moved the conference. I was expecting we would maybe find out maybe late March, early April, but we're kind of finding this out in mid-March. It kind of came out of nowhere, I think, but in a good way. I mean, I think it's way better to find out earlier rather than later. I think that's just a good thing, so you can get all of preparations in mind, especially as people who are like trying to arrange things to do around. But like, I like that it gives more people more time to make more plans. I always think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's always good to have an announcement early, because flights are expensive and hotels also. I had a little story that I wanted to tell you. So I called my mom yesterday because she usually drives me together with Sylvia to the airport, and so I was like, by the way, Apple announced the dates of the conference dates. I'm gonna leave in the first week of June, and her first reaction was like, "Oh, they're doing another one." And I was like, "Yes, Mom,
it went well last year."
And she was like, "What are they gonna announce this time?" I was like, "Well, I don't know." But
does she think they ran out? Like, that's it?
She was under the. My mom, every time Apple announces something, she's surprised that they have more. So, like, when the iPhone 10 came out, she was like, "Oh, they have another iPhone." She's always like somehow convinced that Apple is making the last of everything.
They perfected it, Mum. They're done.
No more conferences, no more iPhones. But yeah, seriously, I think it was about a couple of weeks ago that John and I we were certain that Apple would have an announcement for WWDC, and so we prepared. Like, we had a post ready to go. We had an entire setup with Pingdom and all these alert systems to make sure that the announcement was being monitored, but nothing happened. And yesterday I was actually I was not expecting the announcement at all. I was writing. So I'm working on this story for the website next week, and I had when I'm in this mode, I put all my devices in do not disturb. So I was writing, then I get up because of the time to stand notification, and I look at my iPhone, and there was a message from you. What did you text me? Something about... I
sent you a screenshot of flight times.
The flight. Do you think this is about the prices? Do you think this is okay? And I was like, am I missing something here?
What I said to you was, I'm sure you're busy right now, but we need to book this. And you're like, why? I'm like, WWDC? And then you were like, am I missing something here? And I was like, WWDC is announced. And you were like, wait, what? Are you being serious? I'm like, are we doing this again?
You sent me in all caps, dude, it's out now. That's they just announced it also in all caps. Yeah, because I was not expecting the announcement at all. I thought at this point it was going to be April. So I was really surprised. And I was thinking about this. I was actually discussing this with you before the show. I almost feel like the announcement has been made. We dealt with the hotel and flight stuff for 30 minutes to an hour. You dealt with the announcement on Relay FM for the live show. And then it all passed and we were done. I don't feel like the same... I don't know, but I don't want to say that I'm not happy. Of course, I'm super excited, but the mechanic of the announcement, it flew by almost. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I mean, kinda. I think that your circumstances are slightly different, right? So this is your third time. The first year was your first year, so you're super excited. Your second year was the biggest change in 10 years. So that created a lot of discussion and thought and what is this going to be like? What is this going to be like? So now this year, there are a couple of things to it. One, it's you're a little bit more used to it. And two, there isn't anything new or big, and we're finding out way earlier than usual, right? Like, it's usually, I mean, if memory serves, like, it's been like late April sometimes. So now we're kind of middle of March. You're still like basically best part of 3 months away. That you are maybe just, it's too far to think about, you know?
Yeah, I think that's it. And also maybe the fact that at least the current rumors are not suggesting any new groundbreaking features coming to iOS. I think that's also kind of setting the mood in a different way. Like last year, there were all kinds of rumors, if I recall, about Apple are they gonna go back to the iPad? Are they gonna focus on, are they working on augmented reality stuff? But this year, with the rumor of the working on fixes and improvements, and maybe the biggest announcement will be Project Marzipan. I feel like that's sort of setting a different mood in people who are following this stuff. That maybe it's gonna feel different from last year, even though the location is the same.
Yeah. I mean, I get that, but like I've been to bad WWDCs, and there's still. I mean, the event itself, the time is still enjoyable, right? So like
for sure,
you have maybe again, like I don't know, you just maybe not had enough of them yet, right? You had like one bad one and one like the best one you could have ever imagined.
Yes,
right? But like your bad one was still the first time. So I don't know. My feeling still, as we are right now, is that there's never going to be nothing. There's always interesting stuff, even if they're cooling it down. There's still going to be stuff in there that's going to be exciting, and I think that we're still far enough away that there could be other rumors that come out and leaks that come out, if that's the kind of thing that we're looking for to be excited about. Right? I still think that there's time for there to be more. I don't think that prior even the announcement we would typically know all of the rumors we're going to know. And also as well, there's enough time for everyone to like drum up their own beliefs as what's going to happen that get turned into kind of an expected thing. Like Project Marzipan, I think, is one of those, right? Like I think this is something that we're all kind of expecting to happen that still might not happen. I am definitely in the camp of I believe this will happen, but it is unknown. It's unknown if, like, even if they show it off, like, it might not be available this year. It might be like, here's this thing, and it's going to be 2019. Or who knows? Like, I have no idea. But there's still enough that can happen now. They haven't, like, even just hardware, right? We get some new iPads. Like, that would be pretty sweet, right? Like, that would be enough for me.
That would be excellent. Yeah.
But so yeah. I'm remaining cautiously optimistic. But my entire focus, honestly, right now is about our event. Like, that's where my mind is focused on, is this event that we're doing. So I am most excited for that right now.
Oh, yeah.
So buy tickets is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, WWDC, it's coming back at you, first full week of June. I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to all of the different parties and events that are going to be announced. Yeah, it's gonna hit us quicker than we think, though.
Yeah, because I feel like we always go there for the news, for the Apple stuff, but really we go there for the people, to meet our friends, and to meet listeners and readers, and everybody who's part of this entire big community of folks who follow Apple and like Apple products and make apps. So that's the best part of going there and meeting people and being exposed to faces that you normally just see on Twitter timelines. I think that's always been the best part for me.
So I will underscore that by saying, if you want to go, but you either don't want to buy a ticket or don't get a ticket, there's so much awesome stuff to do. It is worth being in San Jose for that week. I am not going to attempt to get a ticket. I'm not interested. There's enough to keep me excited throughout the day. Throughout the evenings, there's so much cool stuff going on. You've applied for a pass again, right?
Yes.
Good luck. I hope that you get it. That makes third time's a charm, right? If you do. The first 2 years you won the lottery, didn't you?
I got lucky the first 2 times. So hopefully it'll continue to work. But even if it doesn't, I'll still be there because it's so worth it, especially for my job and your job, to talk to developers, to meet folks who are working on new apps, new games. It's just an excellent time for.
I just like to hang out and go see live podcasts. Like, it's not really about meetings for me anymore, you know. But yes, I get it. I did last year take more meetings than I've taken in all other years combined, because I think people started to care. But that's not why I go. I do go for the all of the different social events, you know, the different live podcasts, right? To see ATP live, to see the talk show, to go to like fundraisers like App Camp for Girls and stuff like that. Like that's why I go, because those things are genuinely fun. And now I have friends that I'll see there every year. I make new friends every year. Like, it's always a great experience, which I really, really thoroughly recommend that people go to. And if they do go, they should come to our live show, because it's going to be the best thing that you'll see all week.
Yes.
Today's show is brought to you by Squarespace. Use the offer code WORLD at checkout and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. Make your next move with Squarespace to give you all of the tools that you need to create a website for your next idea. You'll be able to grab a unique domain name. You get 24/7 customer support. You get to take advantage of and customize award-winning templates. You get online store functionality and so much more. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform. There's nothing to install, no patches to worry about or upgrades needed. Squarespace take care of all of that stuff for you. Squarespace is so easy to use. It's very customizable. No matter what your skill level, you'll be able to put a website up on Squarespace. I know nothing about website building, but I knew that yesterday I had to put up a blog post for our live event, so I dropped the text in. You can do it all in Markdown, write everything out in Markdown, just drop the Markdown into the text, and it formatted everything for me. I needed to add in an image and a button to give people to click to go buy tickets. I was just drag and drop those elements in, uploaded the image, gave them the URL for the button, and I was done in 10 minutes. It was so simple. I love it. If we tried to build our own system and I had to do that on my own, I wouldn't remember how to do it every time, because I do this stuff so infrequently. Just having an intuitive and easy to use system is exactly what I need. Squarespace's plans start at just $12 a month, but you can sign up for a trial with no credit card required by going to squarespace.com. Then use the offer code WORLD at checkout and you'll get 10% off your first purchase and show your support for Connected and Relay FM. Squarespace. Make your next move. Make your next website. So it was announced during a presentation or a conversation South by Southwest with Eddie Q that Apple have acquired a digital magazine service and company called Texture, who were owned by a larger company that's also, the entire company's been bought. The company is called Next Issue Media, and they made an application service called Texture. Next Issue Media has been purchased by Apple. This even warranted a post on the Apple PR newsroom. Federico, do you know much about Texture? Had you come across Texture before this announcement came out on Monday?
So I was surprised by the fact that Texture was already in my downloads list on the App Store for my Apple ID. So sometime in the past, I downloaded Texture. I tried it. And I'm pretty sure that I didn't keep using it because I don't read magazines, really. I read websites. And this is an application that lets you read articles from magazines like GQ and National Geographic and People and all these popular US magazines, which usually they have a web component. So that's why I don't need to get the magazine version. But I think it's really nicely done if you're that type of consumer who wants to have a digital way of reading magazines.
Is it just scans of magazines, or do they have the content?
I don't think it's just scans. So for example, if I open on a story here, which of course I cannot do because I need to create an account, which I don't have. But what I think it's interesting is the ability to, there's a section called highlights that takes you directly to a story. I don't think it's just like a PDF scan that you have to zoom back and forth to read. Also, the app just crashed for me, so
Great.
That's interesting.
It's all going well so far.
I'm not sure about which kind of format they're using, but I would be surprised if it's just just give us an image and let people zoom into the text. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's what they're doing at all. What I think is interesting and fascinating for Apple is that this company built a system to extract individual stories from magazines and to highlight them in a separate view of the app. So you can have this bundle of magazines that you're paying for with the Netflix-like model. You're paying a subscription and you get access to dozens of, it says 200 plus magazines, and it's $10 per month. But you also get this personalized feed that gives you stories extracted from different magazines, which seems to me like it's a perfect fit for the Apple News model, where you have you can drill down into individual sources, individual websites and publications, or you can stay in the main view where you get a collection of different stories from different websites, and in this case, magazines. And we were speculating about this in our iMessage conversation. And I think I said, or Steven said, that this makes sense for Apple News. And of course, Eddie Q was speaking at South by Southwest a few minutes later. So this announcement, this entire thing was pretty well timed with this Eddie Q appearance. And he confirmed that Apple plans to integrate this technology somehow with Apple News. Because again, it just makes sense for that type of structure, I think.
Yeah, I'm wondering why they're feeling the need to buy this company, though. Like, it feels like what you really need for this is just the buy-in from publications to do this. And unless they have created some really, really special proprietary technology, I don't necessarily understand why Apple needed to buy this company to do this specific thing.
This is my question too. Also because Apple has been, promoting this format that websites can use, the Apple News format, to produce stories for optimized for Apple News. So I was under the impression that Apple wants to work with websites, not with magazines trying to adapt to the internet, but with websites that have already a web presence and a web component. So it's either, I see two possible paths for this, that either Apple wanted to get all these rights and these deals with publishers.
Yeah, but I'm not sure about how that stuff works, right? Because that doesn't seem logical to me, that if you buy a company, you just take all of their contracts. And even if that was the case, like a contract was written in that way, contracts expire. And if Apple are concerned that they're not going to be able to get people to sign contracts with them, which is why they're buying a company for it, like, how do they know they're going to get renewals on the contracts? Like, that doesn't seem like a good reason to buy a company to me.
So I think it's either somehow they worked out a deal that still works for them from that point of view, even though I think I don't know how these things work, or Texture built a technology that is amazing, that Apple wants to have in Apple News, and that maybe they want to move to a format where stories you get on Apple News are more magazine-like, or maybe it's entirely about the engine and about the fact, how it can recommend individual stories, how it can recommend, how it can deal with hundreds of magazines, but also highlight interesting stories on a daily basis. I don't know what the reason is, because of course Apple is not telling us, but maybe there's a point to make about the broader idea of maybe Apple sort of positioning themselves as the company who wants to help publishers in an era where there's a problem of fake news everywhere, basically.
And the publishing industry dying in places,
and the publishing industry dying at the mercy of Facebook, mostly. So I wonder if this is this is what Apple's play is going to be like, of we're going to help you survive. Even though I don't know if, it's just marketing or if it's something that they truly believe in. Because the news industry, from Apple's perspective, it's just something that they can use to push people to subscribe and to get people into the system, essentially. I don't think that they have a genuine... It's not that I don't think, I don't know if they have a genuine feeling of, we need to save the publishing industry because it's good for America and it's good for the world. I don't think if they have that kind of sentiment behind this push for getting this kind of company.
Yeah, I'm also a little bit uncomfortable with any company that says something like what Eddie Q said. We are committed to quality journalism from trusted sources and allowing magazines to keep producing beautifully designed and engaging stories for users. It's the trusted sources thing that I don't like. Like that there is a company that can be like, you can trust this one, you can't trust this one. I don't like. There's something about that kind of thing which is a little bit. It just makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable at times. Where it's like, well, who is making the decisions though about what I can and can't see? I kind of get a little bit uncomfortable with any company that is like cherry picking just the right stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do.
I feel like that is easily open to abuse in one way or another. And also, I personally believe that if you want to ingest any type of news, you should try and have a balanced view on it.
I think there's a general sense of discomfort lately with the news.
And I get why, because if there's just absolute false stories being produced, then yes, of course you should be untrusting of it. But I also like to believe that most people don't just completely shut themselves off from things they don't agree with, right? Like I feel like most people will at least have an idea of things that they don't agree with, and I would want to see Apple doing that. I mean, I don't want Apple to just, if they're going to do something like this, to only have stories from the left, right? Like I feel like that they have to have something which is moderate that can be served for everyone, right? That they have things for everybody, because that seems like the right thing to do, right? Just because you are maybe more on the right side of things, it doesn't mean that everything is wrong, right? Like there is, because there is wrong on both sides of every debate, right? So I would hope that they would at least try and keep things relatively neutral. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's the problem. So someone emailed me few weeks ago, or maybe I was reading an article that I wanted to link to, but anyway, there was this sentence that kind of stood out to me of I don't use the iBook store because Apple is always pushing their liberal agenda. And that really I paused when I was reading this, because it's an issue that even though I don't agree with it, I think Apple, I use Apple News, I would say at least once on a daily basis. I think it tends to have a good mix of different types of sources, but I can see how, especially in this age and this current political landscape everywhere, this is a very sensitive issue.
Yep.
Of, is this company trying to inject their values into the news that I see and the content that I want to buy and pay for? And this is why this acquisition is so peculiar to me, because if it's not for the technology, what is it for then? So the only reasonable explanation that I can think of, it must be the technology and the team, because otherwise, you already have a system where if you want to have content on Apple News, you can say to all these websites, just use this format, just use this code, and you will be on Apple News. Why do you need to say you can find your trusted sources on texture? It's something that I don't understand. People can already choose for themselves, and they can already go on Apple News and find different sources that they like and subscribe. And any website can say, I'm advertising my content as compatible with Apple News. Why the need to cherry pick magazines that are part of this program? This is what I don't understand. So I hope that it's about the technology and not about the ideology behind let me pick all the sources that I think are good for the people, because that shouldn't be Apple's job. That shouldn't be Apple's job at all.
No, especially not where they are as a company, right? The biggest company in the world. And like Apple can decide if the things that they do are more liberal in nature. They can make that decision, and that's fine, but not with something like giving people the information that they receive. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see where I'm going? Like I think it's totally fine for them to do things that would be considered to be liberal, right? Like to support specific causes and to make a stand on certain issues, because there are people that believe that those are the right things to do. I am of that leaning, as I believe that you are too, right? Like we both believe in more liberal ideals, but yes, there are people that don't in the world, and Apple can make those decisions about the way that they want to run the company. But when it comes to like choosing news sources, I don't think you can do that. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
I think you can. They should be able to separate having values as people and as a company and running an editorial service with an editorial board that is not a news organization producing content. Well, to an extent, you could argue that the Spotlight section in Apple News does reflect some of the values of the Apple editorial team, but by and large, it's an aggregation service that collects articles from different sources. It's not the Apple magazine. You're not reading the Apple Times. You're reading sections in Apple News from other people, from other journalists. So I think it's important for Apple at this point in time to separate having values, having opinions, having ethics as individuals and as a company as a whole, and running the App Store Today tab, running Apple News, running these features and these services that showcase content, but that do not necessarily need to be political. I think that's probably an unpopular thought that some people would say, no, Apple should take a stand and should actually promote all the political thoughts that they have. But I think they can do that elsewhere, not in the news application that people want to use to read the news from the Times or the Post or, Fox News or whatever it is. I think as long as it's about the news aggregation service, the news app on everybody's devices, that should be kept neutral.
And of course, there are services that they can not go to, right? Like there are websites that are out there that are just spewing hate, right? And, and just saying just bad things and not even much like false news, but just bad, like really bad opinions about things and saying horrible stuff. And they can choose to not use those, right? But and that's not completely shutting it down. That's like drawing a line around it, but still trying to maintain balance. And of course, it is worth saying, like, Apple are not saying that they're going to do this, but the wording can be a little bit risky if that's a route they want to go down, if that's what they truly believe, right? And it's like, what is trust? How is trust earned? What becomes a trusted source? Like, what views and opinions do they have to have? That kind of thing. Because, for example, in the App Store, right, there are all types of stuff, right? And they have the lines that they draw, but there are all types of things that you can get, right, that reflect many different views and opinions. But there are things that get rejected because they're considered to draw a line, and I think that is perfectly fine as a way to do things. So, yeah,
it's a tricky balance.
It's so tricky that it makes me wonder why they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Apple News as a product is a nice to have. It is not a requirement, because people can just go to the App Store and download news apps, right? Like this is one thing that Apple do not need to do. So I'm keen to see why, right? As what it looks like they're doing is continuing to enforce Apple News as a thing rather than Newsstand, right? I feel like that's where we can see the changes happening, right? They are pushing their one platform, their app with stuff in it, as opposed to a container application which has publications in it that you choose. Like there's an interesting parallel between the App Store's Today tab and what Apple is doing with Apple News, in the sense that on the App Store, Apple is free to have their own voice with the stories that they publish in the Today section, because it's their own controlled environment. Apps that you submit to the App Store, it's Apple's place, and they can choose to feature whatever they want and to share whatever message they want. But Apple News, it's about world facts. It's not about the Apple ecosystem. It's about what's happening in the world. It's about the news. And Apple does not control that, does not own what's happening in the world.
And so it becomes much more trickier for Apple to say, we want to have a voice, but also we want to run this service. Because it's not the kind of, even though the App Store is a huge place now, with I think 2 million apps or something, it's still a controlled environment. It's still a marketplace. It's limited. But on Apple News, you cannot apply the same approach of we as Apple want to have our own voice and want to push our own thoughts and ideas, but also we need to provide people with a neutral service that can scale for different types of people. That's incredibly tricky, and maybe that's why it's been so difficult for Apple to expand Apple News internationally, because you need to essentially reset the culture of the team that runs the service for each country. And that, I suppose that can be extremely costly and tricky to scale. It doesn't surprise me, honestly.
I'm keen to see if we can ever even really point at this as like, oh, that's what they did with it. Right?
Yeah.
Because Apple Music, you can't really point and be like, oh, that's where Beats Music went.
Yeah.
You know? It's just like, well, I mean, the things that Beats Music had and Apple Music had, the things that overlap are not technically complex things, like visual that you can see, right? Like the things that they seem to have really taken from Beats Music was the editorial curation, but they didn't need to buy Beats Music for that. Now, I'm sure that there is lots of stuff under the hood that is Beats Music, but the things that Beats Music did differently, you don't see in Apple Music. Unless, can you correct me if I'm wrong? I mean, I can't think of anything.
I mean, a lot of the Beats Music features, like the best ones, were not carried over to Apple Music at all.
Yep. And I wonder if it's going to be something like that, where it's like, well, there is this thing, which maybe you could say is that team working on it, but you'd never really know.
I wouldn't be surprised if, after all, it's just about the people that were working on this, engineers and designers that have the expertise to aggregate articles from different sources. Maybe that's all there is, really.
We'll wait and see.
I don't know.
All right, today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Pingdom, the company who offer uptime monitoring and web performance management. You're more familiar with Pingdom than you might think because they are helping keep some of your favorite sites up and running 24 hours a day. Because companies like Evernote, BuzzFeed, Netflix, Imgur, these sites use Pingdom because websites are really complicated. They have many different moving parts and things can break. And if something breaks, you want to know about it quickly so you can fix it. And that is what these companies and many, many more, including mine, rely on Pingdom for. You've got contact forms and e-commerce checkouts, logins, search functionality, and so much more these days. Websites can break in a myriad of different ways, and Pingdom will let you check the availability of all of these functions. It isn't just about getting a message if your entire site goes down. They care about the important interactions people have on your site too, and they'll let you know if they're not working. It's really easy to get started. All Pingdom needs is the URL that you want to monitor, and they take care of the rest. Federico even mentioned earlier he had a Pingdom monitor going on for Apple's website to know when the WWDC page changed, right? I know a bunch of people that do that because then you'll know as soon as WWDC is happening because Pingdom will tell you. Go to pingdom.com/relayfm right now for a 14-day free trial with no credit card required. Then when you sign up, use the code connected at checkout to save 30% off your first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom for their support of this show and Relay FM. So, because Stephen isn't here this week, I thought, why don't we do something completely iOS focused that is, I think, something for people that use iOS all day, every day, like me and you do. And I'm calling this segment iOS Little Wonders. So some little things that we encounter on a daily basis that makes iOS so wonderful for us to use every day. And also, while some things are multi-platform, cross-platform, there are some little elements to it that make it better on iOS. The one that I want to talk about was the reason I thought of this thing in the first place, because I took a screenshot on my iPad the other day, and I cropped the screenshot, I copied it, I deleted the screenshot, and then pasted it into Twitter. And I was like, I love this UI so much. It is so good. Like, I take screenshots on the Mac when I'm sitting at my Mac, and the built-in UI just drops a JPEG onto my desktop. That is never what I want to happen. right? Like that is 100% never what I'm looking for. And services like Droplr exist, and they're mostly good, but they're not. None of these things are as good as the screenshot UI in iOS 11. There are still some places I would like to see it get a little bit better. Like I would love a way to be able to delete an image with some kind of action that didn't require tapping. So maybe if I like swiped it to the other side of the screen, or did drag and drop and a little trash can popped up on the screen, I could just drag it over and it disappeared. But just being able to take a screenshot, do whatever I need to it, share it however I want, and then it just be destroyed is amazing. And then you've got all the markup stuff, which I don't use that often, but every time I do, I'm like, I'm so pleased this is all in this one UI. Like, it really is amazing. And then when you get into looking at how different it is on the iPad with drag and drop, where you can take a bunch of screenshots and then drag them all into something, like, it really is just a wonderful advancement that came with iOS 11.
It truly is one of the best little features of iOS 11. I'm glad that you picked this one, because I also use it every day. And in fact, I love the fact that you can take multiple screenshots and they will be stacked in the same carousel. It's really so well done. I want to go as a little feature that I love as shared notes. So a lot of people probably use this, but you can share, if you use the Apple Notes app, you can share a note with someone else. And it's not just that the collaboration is great, because it doesn't require, any complex setup. You just send a link to someone on iMessage or somewhere else, and they can open the note and start editing the note. It's also the fact that if you share a note with yourself, so if you make yourself the collaborator of the note, you can then use the link as a launcher on iOS.
Oh, and my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I do this for a bunch of notes that I access on a regular basis. I share the note with myself, and then I create a launcher, like a widget launcher, that opens the note. The only probable downside is that because it's based on the iCloud, on the CloudKit system, when you tap these launchers, you get like a small dialogue in the middle of the screen that says retrieving for like half a second, and then the note launches. And that's because the system is going to iCloud to say, is this actually a note that I can open? And then it kicks you off to the Notes app. But you see that for like less than a second usually. And it's so convenient because I have a lot of notes that I share with my girlfriend, with John, with other folks for Mac Stories. But really, I have these notes that I share with myself and that I find so useful because I can use them. Otherwise, there's no way to there's no notes URL scheme that you can use to open notes. So this is a good workaround.
That is a cheeky tip, man. I'm going to have to think about all the ways I could use that. Like even with stuff like travel notes, because I will start a travel note, like my WWDC note, and then it's like buried somewhere. And sometimes I just want to be able to get to it from somewhere else, right? Like whether it be something like TripIt or something like that to save a link. Or sometimes I will want to reference a note in a task in Todoist, and I'm just like, search this in Apple Notes, as though I put in the little comment to myself. But being able to grab those URLs and just launching them from Todoist just by tapping on a button, like that would be amazing. That's really great. That's a great tip. My next one was the only shining thing in a otherwise mostly boring WWDC presentation 2 years ago. Stickers and message effects in messages on iOS.
Yes. Yes.
I don't care what anybody says. I use stickers and message effects every single day. I don't think that when any of these message effects were created, they were done with complete seriousness in mind. I would expect that the engineers knew that these things were mostly going to be used ironically and to make fun of certain situations. Because, what else do you need lasers for? Right? But I have so much fun sending these. I send them all the time. And stickers, stickers are just a great way to be expressive. I used an emoji 2 days ago to show my excitement about WWDC. I felt like a unicorn shaking its head with its mouth open was the only way to fully express my excitement level. I use Bitmoji constantly.
You use Bitmoji a lot.
I do. I mean, this started because it's something that me and Adina share with each other, because they are these cute little images that are incredibly expressive, and there are just so many. There are Bitmoji stickers for every occasion, and therefore all of my friends are subject to my Bitmoji now, because I think that they're hilarious, and they're just sometimes there's some really, really good ones. The keyboard sticker messaging, so the sticker app is pretty good. They have a keyboard that I don't use, but the sticker messaging app is really good, and it has a little search in there, so you can search for a term and it just brings up relevant Bitmoji. They're always adding new ones. They have ones for special events and stuff. I really like them. Just stickers in general. I have my favorite packs now. Not too many packs jump in these days, mostly because I tend to just use Bitmoji all the time, but there are still a few that I love, and I think that this was a great addition to the Messages app, and for me it's definitely stood the test of time.
Yeah, I sure do get a lot of Bitmoji from Myke. All right, I want to go with the live photo effects. These are effects that Apple added in iOS 11. I don't think they are super popular, but they're perfect for me, because I have 2 puppies now. I guess dogs, because they are 1 year old. We don't have a precise date because they were abandoned, so we don't know the birthday. But they are these live photo effects. You access them by swiping up on a live photo in the photo app, and you get this gallery, this horizontal carousel at the bottom. There are probably 4 effects. There's loop, bounce, long exposure, and I think just a standard live photo one. And I love the loop and the bounce ones because they are perfect for little dogs playing around and doing stuff. So you create these animations that are either looped or that are reversed with the bounce one. And they are fantastic because then you can share the animation, you can make a GIF out of it, and they're so fun. And you don't need to install a separate app from the App Store to generate these animations. It's built into the Photos app. As long as you take a live photo, all you need to do is swipe up and choose the effect. They're super fun. They're perfect for dogs, I assume also for kids playing around and doing stuff. Or if you're capturing something that is moving in some animated object in general, I think it's probably gonna go well. Also for people jumping into a pool or something, you can use the bounce effect to great extent for that type of live photo. So yeah, they're not super popular, but I use them a lot.
One thing that I wish that those live photo effects did was to work like live photos, because sometimes they don't. Like, they just loop like as if they're GIFs. You know what I mean? Like, so then when you do the 3D touch on them, it doesn't necessarily always do what I want to do. So I would like to just be able to replace what the happens when I 3D touch. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
But I do really like those effects. I think they're really good. And the last one that I wanted to mention was share extensions. Share extensions are very nice, and my favorite one is the notes one. So, like, being able to see a link on Twitter or over iMessage or something like that, and then just share it with the share extension, add it to a note, and the note, the link is there with, like, it's a rich link, so it's like images and headlines, which are way easier to pass, rather than just copying and pasting text links into a document. I find it so much nicer. Like, typically I'll be on Twitter, say I'm on my Mac, I'm reading Twitter or whatever, like waiting for something to upload or whatever. And I see a link that I want to add to my note for connected. So, like, I keep these notes for all of my shows where I add URLs for things that I want to talk about, right? And then on the day of the show, I go in and look at those URLs and add in all the topics that I want to do for the shows. Sometimes I'll see a link on Twitter and then I'll just grab my iPhone, open Tweetbot, and then add it there. because I know it'll be way easier for me later on to have the rich link rather than to have just this string of text for like macstories.net/something/something, right? Because it doesn't mean anything when I'm just looking at it, even though your URLs are amazing, of course. But I much prefer to have the actual headline and any associated imagery just right there. I love the share extensions, and that is my favorite one because it is just a way nicer way for me to be able to share URLs around. Because on the Mac, even though there are share extensions or at least some kind of share UI, it's not good, really, at all. So, what are you going to do? I don't think it's very good. So I love the way that it's implemented on iOS. So I think it's really great. All right. Is that it for today?
I think so.
Well, then, if you want to get our show notes for this week, go to relay.fm/connector/184. There you will find all the information that you need to buy tickets to our WWDC live show, which you definitely should. They're just $5, and that you will be able to enjoy the show with hundreds of other Relay FM listeners. And you'll also be supporting OtConf, which is a great, awesome thing to support. They do awesome work for people in our community. You also find information about our sponsors there. Pingdom, Squarespace, and Linode were kind enough to sponsor this week's episode. I want to thank everyone for listening. If you want to find Federico online, he's at macstories.net. He is at Vitici on Twitter, VITICCI. When Stephen is not just outside of the McInerney Convention Center in San Jose, he can also be found at 512pixels.net, and he is at ISMH on Twitter. And I am at iMyke, IMYKE. Until next time, say goodbye, Federico.
Arrivederci.
Cheerio.